trauma bonding is part of complex trauma with children. This to me is such an important thing. So here's what we know from complex trauma with children. Children need to form a connection with their caregivers in order to survive. They can't meet their own needs. They can't take care of themselves. They need somebody else to do it. So they're driven with this powerful drive to connect to their caregivers. So they just try to connect over and over again. But what happens if their parents are neglecting and abusing them? They're not meeting their needs. They're hurting them. The child can't just run away from home and meet their own needs. They're too little. So they are driven to still try to connect, but now they have to adapt. So they learn to fawn. They learn to people please. They learn to adopt different roles and wear different masks. They learn to be attuned to the parents' needs, to put their own needs aside. They're trained to be codependent. That all becomes part of what happens inside of them because they need to connect. And so a trauma bond takes place with somebody who's hurting them, but they have no other option if they're going to survive. But then what makes it even stronger, the bond, is for the child, they go, well, my parents aren't all bad. We have lots of good times. They are nice to me sometimes. We have fun together. And so there's intermittent, sporadic times that are good. And so they go, yeah, see, these are wonderful people to connect to. That sets off this whole thing in the brain called denial, where they then are able to kind of deny the bad stuff and just focus on the good stuff. And all of a sudden they paint their parent as a hero. They look at the lessons they've learned from all the bad stuff and they go, see, that means the lessons were good. All the bad stuff was actually good because it taught me good lessons. And they just put their parent in this hero role because the child needs a hero. The child needs somebody to look up to. That's built into them as well. And so their brain is doing these distortions to try to make it feel good to the child. But something else is happening. What the child begins to realize is there's a bit of a cycle happening. It's a bit of a roller coaster. They go through good times, then they're followed by tension, then they're followed by bad times, but then they come back to the good times. And they get used to that. And they begin to realize if we just get through the bad times, the good times will come back. And so that becomes all part of what's normal for them. And every time the good times come, they go, see, that proves my parents are wonderful people. So the question becomes, if a child went through that, they come into adult life, they get away from their parents, they should be able to start seeing, wow, there's a lot of unhealthy stuff there. And I never want to go back there, but why do they go back into abusive relationships and create trauma bonds again with abusive people? So what I want you to understand is think of that child in a home of complex trauma. There's a whole bunch of different factors that play into this whole thing. So number one, not only is a child driven to connect, we don't outgrow that drive to connect. There's something in us, even as adults, that is still driven to connect with people, to connect with activities that give pleasure, to connect with beauty that gives pleasure. And so we seek out friendships, we seek out relationships where we feel comfort and support. We're driven to connect. And so here's what I want you to understand. Remember in the definitions we said that the abuser is the one that orchestrates a trauma bond. The abuser knows somebody's trying to connect with them. Somebody's looking to them for support, for friendship, for help. They see that. They feel it. Now they're not just going to abuse the person. They're going to abuse that connection drive to create a trauma bond. That's so sad. So what can happen in a child because of this is that they often then begin to associate love with abuse. That if a person loves you, they'll abuse you. And that's normal. So they get a distorted view of love. Then after they've been in this for so long, they just go, this is normal. They don't even see it as crappy or terrible anymore. It's just, it's so-so. It's not the greatest, but it's normal. They minimize the negative parts of it because it's normal. And then when things improve just a tiny little bit, oh, this is really good. So their way of evaluating shifts to a different standard. Another thing that can happen is because a child needs a hero, let's say both mom and dad are neglecting them, hurting them, abusing them, but dad's plays with the child once in a while. Dad's a little bit more fun to be with. Dad gives them gifts. So all of a sudden what they do is they put dad on a pedestal and they make mom the bad guy. And they turn all their hatred towards mom. And they just find fault with mom and everything and just see dad as perfect. So that can happen. So that drive to connect is huge. But then it's understanding brain chemicals. So whenever we experience love or what feels like love, so if you think of your love languages, when people say nice things to you, people give you gifts, people make sacrifices for you, people spend time with you, people give you physical affection and hugs, all of that feels like love. It releases chemicals in the brain. It releases dopamine, that's pleasure. It releases serotonin. It releases oxytocin, that feels love. And there's vasopressin, which builds towards long committed relationships. So all of those good chemicals flood your brain and it feels wonderful. But there's another purpose that I want you to understand with dopamine. So when a need seems to be met, so you feel pleasure. The brain goes, oh, that must have just met a need. That's why you feel good. So you were very sad and you ate food and that made you feel better. So it releases dopamine, not just to give you pleasure, but to burn in a memory. So that the next time you feel sad, you need to eat food because that meets your need. That will make you feel better. And so what is happening is a child who gets what is not genuine love. They get gifts once in a while to buy them off. They get a bit of fun once in a while that feels good. They get the odd, I love you once in a while, but it's totally hypocritical. The actions don't match the words, but it feels good. The child has a release of chemicals and they go, this is love. I feel loved. And then it burns into the memory that these people are the ones who love me. These people are the ones I need to go to every time I'm feeling a need. There's another part to this, and that is these chemicals are also released at another time. Apart from love, if you are going through fear, deprivation, you're going through neglect and abuse, okay? So you're in a very negative place. There's no positive chemicals in your brain. There's fear, there's anger, there's cortisol, there's this emptiness inside you, this blackness inside you, and all of a sudden, the trauma stops, the fear stops, the danger stops. All of a sudden, somebody stops withholding love from you. Somebody does one little thing for you. It releases those chemicals. It's the stopping of the bad that releases the chemicals. It's one thing that appears to be almost like a little kindness that releases the chemicals. So what I want you to understand is that trauma, if that's your normal, as soon as the trauma stops, it releases chemicals and you feel whoever made this stop loves me. Whoever made this stop is the person I want to connect with. And so that is another big part of this trauma bonding. Then there's a third piece, and that's the cycle of abuse. So the cycle of abuse is the relationship begins with this love bombing, honeymoon, where the person uses your 5 love languages and they just heap you with gifts, they say nice things, they do things for you, they spend lots of time with you, and you just feel love, love, love. But then it moves beyond that stage and it goes to attention stage. They start to devalue you. They put you down. There's discontent happening. Tension is starting to build. And then it comes to this explosion stage where there's abuse. So that initial first time through the cycle, that can take 6 months to a year before you eventually get from the honeymoon to the explosion stage, but then it starts cycling through more rapidly. So after the explosion, they feel bad. Everybody's nice and good again, but then you go to that building tension, devaluing, their discontent, and then another explosion. So that's what begins to happen. So what I want you to understand is in that very first time through the cycle, when that person is love bombing you, looking like they're meeting your 12 needs, you're being flooded with the chemicals in your brain that feel so good. You feel so much like you're being loved. You got dopamine locking in that this is the person who loves you, that meeting your needs. You are feeling this strong emotional bond building with this person who's love bombing you because of this stage. Then when you get to the things starting to go bad, and there's a lot of fear starting to happen, there's deprivation, devaluation, then there's the acute explosion. You go back to the honeymoon stage and you get all the chemicals again. You go, oh, see, this is a wonderful person. They're just having a bad day. But then the cycle starts going around and around. And what begins to happen with that is it gets more and more of the negative, less and less of the honeymoon. But you know that when you're in this very negative place where the tension's building and your needs are deprived and there's no good chemicals coming and you got fear building, the good stuff's going to come soon. Just hang in there. And when the good stuff comes, such a relief. Or when the anger stops, when the abuse stops, all the chemicals flood in. When the trauma stops, all the chemicals flood in. And you go, this person's the wonderful person. And so you can see that the more this cycle continues, the stronger the bond, chemical bond that's happening in the brain that is being built. So back again to this tension stage. The person begins to know that after the tension stage comes the reward, where the pain stops and the love bombing starts. So they can tolerate the tension stage now. They might actually try to make the bad stuff happen just to get on with the good stuff. So they've now got a reward system built into the cycle, and the person that gives the reward is the person that's abusing them. But they look forward to the reward. That makes them feel very connected to this person. It's interesting to me to see the similarities here between Stockholm syndrome. So Stockholm syndrome came because of a bank robbery and people that were taken captive as part of the bank robbery. And what they found is after these captives, after a while, began to identify with their captors. They began to feel affection for them, loyal to them. And they go, what just happened here? These people are holding them, kidnapping them, holding them hostage. And now they like them. They have affection for them. What happened there? And so what psychologists believe is that when they were first captured, they were made to feel that they could lose their life. So their fear went to the max. They were in a super traumatized place. Then, when the captors decide not to kill them, they just feel this huge relief, which floods them with all the chemicals. They even feel now gratitude to their captors for letting them stay alive. And all of those chemicals going on in their brain now cause them to feel affection, to listen to their captors, to identify with their captors. And so trauma bonding happens within the Stockholm syndrome. It's part of it, but what I want you to see is it goes beyond that. Now there's a fourth element to trauma bonding, and that's that intermittent. So you go through the cycle, you know the good time's coming, you're just not sure when. So you don't know when the reward's going to come, but it's sporadic, you can't predict it. And you don't know when they're going to switch from Jekyll to Hyde. That's unpredictable as well, but you know it's going to happen. And so what we know from addiction is that one of the hardest types of addictions to deal with is where the reward is intermittent. So take gambling. So a person gambles and they don't know if they're going to hit a jackpot this time, but they know in the past they have hit a jackpot. So they could go 20, 30 times without getting a jackpot, and they're getting further and further in debt. But what's going on inside their brain is, but I know if I just keep trying, a jackpot will come. And so that intermittent aspect keeps hope alive longer, that we'll get back to the good. Because I've seen it once, I've seen it periodically. I just have to try a little bit longer, my luck's going to change. So that intermittent piece is huge. So somebody said this, trauma bonding happens specifically because an abuser provides you with intermittent rewards and punishments. In doing so, a psychological conditioning takes place, whereby the survivor becomes entangled in the relationship, always hoping to return to when it's good time frame. Eventually, you will settle for almost any little breadcrumb of the version of who the narcissist was in the beginning. You may even settle for not being punished as a reward or for a version of love bombing. So that leads to that this is an addiction issue. An addiction develops in the brain. So if you think of a person with drug addiction, in the beginning, it was all positive. The drug gave them a high. It took all their problems away. It just made life feel wonderful. But then more and more negative happening. And now the drug is destroying them. But what is going on in the brain? If I do it one more time, maybe I'll get the high again. I need to do it one more time. And so they keep going back to the drug even though it is hurting them and destroying them. That's what's happening in trauma bonding. It started great, but now this person is abusing you and you keep going back to them hoping it's going to be different this time. Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist, says the brains of those in adversity-ridden relationships become activated in an eerily similar way to the brains of cocaine addicts. Again, just understand that what's happening every time a person in addiction starts to come down and feel crappy is their brain goes, we need to go back and take another hit of the drug, and that'll fix everything. And so when a person is in this cycle with an abuser, and every time the tension is starting to build and there's fear developing and their needs are not being met and it feels crappy, their brain is saying, I need to go back to the abuser because they're the only ones who can fix this. The next piece to understanding trauma bonding is understanding the gaslighting element and indoctrination. So if you look at a child in complex trauma, there's a huge gaslighting indoctrination component to their upbringing. So when their parent is mad, their parent says it's to the child, it's your fault. Now that's gaslighting. It's not the child's fault. It's the parent's fault. The parent then makes the child think they need to put their needs aside, make their parents' needs all important, that they need to conform to the rules that the parent has set, even though the child's gut says this isn't right, this isn't fair. They need to do whatever the parent says. They need to let the parent think for them. They need to distrust their own thinking, their own emotions, their own gut, and they need to give their parents total weight in their life, total control of their life. They need to be totally dependent on their parents for everything. That's part of the indoctrination. So the parents get rid of critical thinking. They get you to distrust your emotions, your gut, and depend totally on them. That's what happens in adult relationships. The abuser tries to recreate that type of dependence. So they gaslight you. They indoctrinate you. They begin to get you to not trust yourself. But here's where they have to begin, by getting you totally dependent on them. And so they will say, you don't need your parents. Your parents are a bad influence. Your parents are sick. You don't need your friends. We just need each other. You just need me. We meet each other's needs. And so they do all of that to start cutting you off so that you're only dependent on them. And then to help do that, they often will say, I'm the only one that gets you. They don't understand you. They don't really care about you. I'm the only one that cares about you. I am committed to protecting you, to providing you. I care about your needs. And they draw you into greater and greater dependence on them, believing that they are the only ones who can be what you need. And you trust them more and more. But then it goes even further. So they first are cutting you off from all your external supports, not trusting anybody else anymore, seeing them almost as dangerous or the enemy. Now they want to do that with yourself as well. They want you to stop trusting your gut, to stop trusting your own thinking. They start to devalue you and say, you're stupid. Oh, you're not seeing that right. Oh, you got that all wrong. You never get anything right. And they start to get you to doubt your own thinking, to doubt your own gut, to doubt your perception of things, so that you put more and more weight in their perception of things, more and more weight in what they feel, what they think. That determines your reality, not your own perception of stuff. That's the gaslighting indoctrination process. And so what is really happening there is they are deepening your shame. They're getting you to doubt yourself more and more, to think worse and worse of yourself, to see yourself more and more as helpless, as a loser, can't do anything right. They're taking away your ability to stand up for yourself, to respect yourself, your backbone. And that all creates greater dependence on them. But think about the indoctrination, the beliefs that they're starting to get you to believe. First, if you conform, and you go back to the little child in complex trauma, if I conform, if I obey mom and dad, if I am nice, if I'm on my best behavior, that seems to make things better. So, good behavior is rewarded. Conforming is the recipe to happy relationships, doing what the other person wants. So that means I need to lose myself, make myself small, put my needs aside, serve their needs, be attuned to their needs. That's the recipe for a healthy relationship. So what you're seeing is that the child is beginning to believe that fawning is the correct ingredient, the only ingredient for a healthy relationship. I must be small, they must be big, I must please them however possible. It goes further. If they're upset, if they're mad, if they abuse me, it's my fault. I've done something wrong to upset them. I could have prevented it. So how things work out in the relationship is dependent on me. So if something's going wrong, I need to try harder, because if I try harder, it'll fix it. So what you can see is there's this link developing in the child's mind and the adult's mind, is that my happiness is dependent on their happiness. If they're happy, I'm happy. So if they're not happy, I need to make them happy so that I can be happy. The two are inextricably linked in the person's mind. But there's more that's happening here. If I'm in pain, the child is thinking, only mom and dad can fix my pain. They need to validate that they hurt me and apologize. They need to validate that my pain is real. Then I can resolve the pain. Then I can move on the pain. That's the way it should be. But what is happening because of that is you begin to believe, when you're in an abusive relationship, that the only way I can move on from my pain and the wounds is they have to validate that they hurt me. They have to validate that my pain is real. In other words, I am dependent on the healing journey. They are necessary. They have a necessary role in my healing journey, that they have to validate my pain. They have to validate that they did something wrong. Otherwise, I can't move on. What they don't see is that you could fix the pain by leaving the relationship, by validating the pain yourself, by having other healthy people validate your pain. Then you could heal. Then you could really do well. But what the indoctrination has done is brought you to a place where you begin to believe, I need them to validate it. That's the only way I can heal and move on. So do you see that these characteristics here and beliefs are all codependent characteristics? So what is happening is that you are believing that you must become codependent in order to have a relationship. You have to put your needs aside. You have to conform. You have to make their needs all important. You have to be more attuned to them than you are to yourself. You have to be the one that makes all the sacrifices and does all the changing. So trauma bonding is part of codependency. That's what I want you to see. There's a final aspect to this trauma bonding. If you think of the child with trauma bonding in complex trauma, it creates an unhealthy default setting, an unhealthy normal. So, number one, they have an unhealthy but normal relationship template, which is they're superior, I'm inferior, my needs don't matter, their needs matter, I must sacrifice, they never sacrifice. That becomes your normal. And so that then, when you get to be an adult, you're attracted to what feels normal. And so you're attracted to abusive relationships. But then you have, my needs aren't being met. My needs don't matter. I must make myself small. That whole belief system of codependency that becomes your normal. Then you have this cycle of abuse that becomes your normal. Things are good, but then they're really bad for a long time, but the good's going to come again. And you just accept that as your normal. So all of that feels familiar. All of that becomes what you think everybody must go through. And so you walk right back into it in your current relationships and you accept breadcrumbs. So if you've been through this, here's what I want you to understand from what I've just said. All of those factors, when they come together, make a powerful bond. A bond that's unhealthy, a bond with a person that's hurting you, but it's a powerful bond and it's hard to break. So you will not hear from me any talk that says, oh, just leave the person. Just like flip a switch, get over this trauma bond, break it, be done with it. You need to break and be done with it, but it doesn't just happen easily because that bond is hard to break. So I'm going to get into healing, but before I do, I want to touch on what are some of the issues around or challenges you have when it comes to breaking a trauma bond. Understand that the trauma bond was orchestrated by the abuser. They drew you into their web. So when you try to break it, they're not going to be happy about it. They're going to try to draw you back in. They're going to try to hoover you, is the term we use. So they're going to love bomb you again. They're going to make false apologies. I'm sorry. They're going to make false promises. I'll do it differently this time. I'll get help. Anything to draw you back in. And one of the things that many people have, that once they break, the person will come back. Could we just talk about this? Maybe we can work this out. I just need to be able to talk to you. I need you to explain it to me. What you need to understand is that when they ask to talk to you, it's not so they can understand. It's so they can manipulate your thinking. So they can twist your thinking again and get you confused again. And that's going to help bring you back into their web again. So be aware of that hoovering stuff that they're going to try to do. Secondly, if you leave, fantastic. But be aware that your feelings may not just disappear. You may still miss them. You may still feel feelings of love towards them at times. You are going to have desires to go back to them. Be aware of that. When those feelings hit, don't feed them. Don't give in to them. It doesn't mean you're failing to have those feelings. It just means your brain is doing what your brain does. It's looking, because of all that dopamine, what's the solution to the emotions I'm feeling right now? And it's saying, oh, I need to go back to this person. So the feelings in your limbic brain are going to take a long time to gradually get less and less and disappear. So you got to kind of sit through letting those feelings come, acknowledging them, but not giving into them. Now, what happens to some people is they're in a relationship. They know in their head, this relationship is all bad now. It's hurting me. I need to leave. They want to leave, but their feelings just keep them in the relationship. I can't leave. Maybe if I just talk to them, it'll get better. Maybe, and they just are powerless to actually break through. And that's where you're going to need some help. And we're going to come back to that. Also understand that this addiction element, that you formed an addiction in your brain to this person, so that when you're going through any negative emotions, fear, loneliness, sadness, pain of any kind, your brain's going to immediately go, the solution is to go back to this person. And so you're going to go through craving your drug every time you hit a negative emotional space, because your brain thinks that's going to take you back to your happy place, and maybe this time it will be different. Let me just add another piece here. Another danger for so many people is, I just need to talk to them and have them validate that what they did to me was wrong, that they did hurt me, that it's their problem, that they're the one that needs to change, that I am working on myself, I am growing. I need them to validate all of that. I need that conversation. No, you don't. And if you try, it never, hardly ever works. They will just use that to manipulate you. They'll use that to confuse your thinking. They'll use that to gain power in your thinking again. So don't go there. Don't give them an opportunity to try and distort your thinking again. So what do we do to heal? Again, treat this like an addiction. So with an addiction, a person that's been in hard drugs, they don't go to casually using again. They got to go to abstinence. And when they get a craving, they can't feed that craving in their mind. They can't play with it in their mind. And so you got to go to abstinence from this person. And when you get thoughts and feelings, don't feed them. You got to just break that bond by action and not feed it at all. But then you got to connect to healthy stuff. You got to build healthy connections with healthy people, with healthy activities, with beauty, things that begin to meet your needs in healthy ways, that feed your soul. That becomes a key part of breaking an addiction trauma bond. So be aware that cravings will come. That doesn't make it bad, that you're failing. That's just your brain is still going back to old solutions. It's not confident yet in the new solutions. Over time, that's going to change, but be aware that that's going to happen. And this is where I'd say most people need help. Find a program, a therapist who understands addiction and trauma bonding, who can help you walk through those very difficult times. But let me take it even further. The trauma bonding stuff that you're going through today, you need help with, yes. But find a therapist, a program like our LIFT program that will help you understand the complex trauma that set this all up as a child, that set your first trauma bonds as a child, so that you can begin to understand how that affected you, created shame, created codependency, created all that fawning and people-pleasing stuff, so that you can begin to heal that. And bottom line with all of that is heal the shame piece. So here's what I'm saying as extra with this shame part. What you began to believe is that you were dependent on them. Only they could meet your needs. You couldn't be happy without them. You couldn't be healthy without them. Yes, you can. You don't need them. You can learn to meet your own 12 needs. You can learn to have healthy relationships apart from them. You can learn that you matter and that you're capable of meeting your needs and you don't need them. When you can get to that point, that is such an important part of the healing journey. Now, let me give you one final thing. Many people, when they're going through breaking a trauma bond, they will break the trauma bond, but then their brain will get triggered with a memory. They're missing the person. They feel love again for the person. So they're back into their limbic brain, feeling all of the positive stuff. What you need to understand is that your limbic brain gets very distorted. It goes back to fantasy-like thinking. Oh, if we just could talk one more time and try this one more time, it would be different this time. And it can get you mixed up in a hurry and on the wrong road in a hurry. What people need is a practical tool when their limbic brain gets triggered and they start into all that distorted thinking. What can they do to get back to their cortex, to get back to the facts that this is an unhealthy person, emotionally unavailable, neglectful, abusive? So what they do is they write down all the things that that person's done to them. They put it on a piece of paper or in their phone. They write down all the facts, the evidence, the things that have happened, that have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the early love bombing stage was a mask, was fake. The real person is emotionally unavailable, is abusive, is neglectful. And they write down all the evidence so that when they're triggered, they read the evidence again. It helps them to get grounded. I need to stay on this path of not going back. And it can be very helpful for them. So that's trauma bonding. It's a powerful, powerful part of complex trauma. And I hope it helps you understand your complex trauma even better. And if you are in relationships where you realize, wow, I do have a trauma bond here to somebody that's abusing me or neglecting me, I hope this helps you realize, okay, don't beat yourself up for that. This is what happens. But let's start to think of how to break this bond so that you can get out of it and you can find this life that you've been looking for in healthy ways.